Let's get started. We'll have I think a few more people who will be joining us, but in the meantime, we'll make sure we start on time and hopefully finish a little bit earlier so you can enjoy the rest of your afternoon or evening. So thank you again so much for attending our webinar on exploring blockchain-powered applications using Blockmason Link. I am going to be one of your co-hosts for this webinar. My name is Harish. I'm the COO here at Blockmason, and I've got my colleague Clayton here. Clayton, do you want to just say hello?
Hi, I'm Clayton. I'm the marketing manager here at Blockmason, and I'm really excited that you guys are here. I think this is going to be an awesome webinar. If any of you are looking at doing blockchain tech in the future, this will be a great place to get some awesome ideas for the projects that we'll be showing today.
Awesome. Thanks, Clayton. So really, the motivation for us to run this particular webinar was having gone through a relatively successful hackathon over at Waterloo, and we'll get into some of the details there. But it was really empowering to see the types of applications that came out of this event in such a short amount of time, in basically less than 36 hours. And so we'd like to showcase some of these projects here to give our viewers here a sense of the types of applications that can be built, and really to highlight also the benefit of using a tool like Link to be able to get up and running with your blockchain-powered microservices. So I always like to start by presenting this slide because it is important to put into context around why even use blockchain. And this industry sort of got this problem where blockchain is seen as a solution looking for a problem, basically a hammer looking for a nail to hit. And so it is important to take that step back and sort of assess the technology and then ask yourself, is blockchain really the right solution for what I'm trying to achieve for my end users and also for my tech stack that I'm using. And so there are some tangible benefits of using blockchain. We've got some of the most common ones listed here. So the fact that you do have this public infrastructure for storing data, and by having this in the public domain, there's obviously pros and cons of that. But one of the pros being that there's greater transparency. And so if you're looking at building any sort of application where you want to be able to have the ability to show records in a transparent manner, there's some merit in using a public infrastructure. It's decentralized, so no single actor by themselves can necessarily bring a network down, something that can't also be said about centralized networks and cloud tools. The records themselves are immutable, so once they're written to the blockchain, they're permanent. And of course, this has got the benefit of being able to store records when you're operating in sort of an environment where there may be challenges with corruption or other nefarious actors that might be wanting to change title deeds or other types of records. These records are transparent, they're presented in a chronological manner, they're time-stamped, and by leveraging blockchain, you can also get into the areas of having this network self-govern itself. And so there are consensus protocols in place that ensure things like double spend and other sort of key elements of ensuring that you transact value securely are maintained to prevent fraud and abuse.
And before we move on, I just want to quickly say, if you guys have any questions throughout the webinar, I forgot to mention this at the beginning, but please, you can raise your hand and we'll take a moment to answer any of those. If we're going too quickly, you can do the same, just so you know.
Great, thanks for that clarification, Clayton. Yes, I definitely forgot to mention that. So if any of you have done any app or decentralized app development, you're probably quite familiar with these pain points that a developer or even the end user has to go to interact with a decentralized application. So some of the most common challenges, the first being having to acquire the cryptocurrency to be able to have that in either a browser wallet like MetaMask, or to be able to store it, to be able to use to pay for the gas fees for transactions. There is an element of having to acquire some sort of underlying crypto token to be able to use the particular decentralized app on a blockchain. And then if you take a look at some of the complicated libraries that are involved with Web3, for example, there's a lot of really, fairly well developed tools in the public domain, like the Truffle framework, which I've personally enjoyed using. There are still limitations and challenges with using some of those tools, especially for somebody who isn't a blockchain experienced developer or has a lot of blockchain development experience. And if you look at a lot of these applications where the first thing you're prompted to do when you access the decentralized app, normally they ask you to interact or interface with your browser wallet. And that's a little akin to like going into a grocery store and having to provide your wallet to the owner first before you're able to go in and shop. And that's not really sort of a pleasant experience, especially when you don't really even know to the level of detail that the third party wants access to your MetaMask or your crypto wallet. And so what we're trying to do with the link is to remove a lot of those barriers for both users and the developer, so that these friction points are mitigated and minimized as much as possible. So at a high level, Link functions as a service platform, and because the focus is on interoperability, currently any Ethereum compatible blockchain can be integrated into Link, and so that provides developers with the flexibility to choose the benefits of multiple blockchains as opposed to being locked into one particular tech stack or one particular blockchain. Links basically serves as a wrapper around smart contract functions, and so it creates web APIs with effectively one click. And so as a front-end developer, you're not so much worried about the hosting and the back-end server infrastructure. You're really just focused on building your application to be able to deliver value to your end users, and Link serves as that back-end server. And because of our roots in decentralization, it makes it a tool like Link makes it very easy to interact with blockchains. So when we approached the participants at Hack the North, one of the common questions we got as we were at the booth was, what are the types of benefits that these participants are able to get by using a tool like Link, and what can they do with it in a relatively short amount of time? And some of these benefits have been highlighted, but the fact that it's a hosted cloud-based infrastructure, we're blockchain agnostic, so you can pick amongst any Ethereum compatible blockchain. If you wanted to run your own node, there are ways to connect Link to your own node that you're running. There's a bunch of SDKs that Link offers. So from the front end perspective, you can code in your programming language of choice. We've got SDKs for Java, JavaScript, Ruby, .NET to allow you to build your applications based on those languages, or you can figure out another way with another language to connect with the Link APIs. And when it comes to microservices, some of the most common ones that we saw being discussed to be included in the projects were things like building a token economy, or being able to record any sort of key data, whether it's asset identification or other critical data in sort of a permanent manner. That was another benefit of being able to use Link and blockchain for their applications. Being able to quickly spin up a simple service like a commenting service for a social media feature, or simply accepting crypto payments instead of having to deal with payments in multiple fiat currencies, for example. These were all sort of commonly highlighted feature sets that people were attracted to look at using blockchain and Link to incorporate that into their applications. So let's dive right in and talk about some of the key examples that we saw, some of the applications that we had built in, again, a relatively short amount of time. For most of these projects, it was 36 hours to build something. Some of the teams actually even took less than that because they spent the first 8 to 10 hours just sort of testing out and figuring out what they wanted to do before they actually got started. So at this point, I'll actually pass it over to Clayton. Clayton, do you want to start talking a little bit about the events, and then we can get into our...
All right. All right. So I'll take it from here. Thank you so much, Reese, for that nice little intro. So Hack the North. Yeah, Hack the North was an awesome event. So what it is it's a 36-hour hackathon, like Reese mentioned, and it's essentially the one of the premier hackathons in North America. So it's considered a pretty big deal because it's got 1,500 students who participate from all around the globe. They had teams from India, they had teams from other parts of Asia, they had teams from all around the world. A lot of them from Canada, from the U.S., and it's hosted at the University of Waterloo, which is a big tech hub, and there's a lot of big companies around that area and a big area in general for technology. So in the actual hackathon, there's 300 plus projects. So there's a lot of projects that get judged, and there's eventually going to be a top 10 and then a top 1 winner. And along with that, there's a series of API prizes from big heavy hitters like Google, Facebook, and Microsoft. And Blockmason, we snuck in there too. So it was great to be a sponsor for this sort of event. Got to meet a bunch of great, awesome students. They were super excited to be there, and they had really great ideas and just some really eager people. It was awesome. So let's dive into the first project that came out of Hack the North. So this was an awesome project, Multimedia Alert System. MAS was what it was for short. We actually we were lucky because we got to work pretty closely with this team. We were mentors at the event as well as sponsors, so we were able to go between teams and help them out with their technology and help them use Link and get used to how blockchain works and how Solidity works and things like that. So what Multimedia Alert System is it's a native mobile app, which is really cool because it was actually, for us, it was the first time we got to see somebody using our Link Java SDK to build a mobile app firsthand, which is really great. And what they essentially do is they aggregate a bunch of data from Facebook and Twitter and populate a map with all the disasters that are going on in the world at that time. So what it allows you to see is quickly identify where things are going on. And then from that map, you can then use a link to basically donate cryptocurrency, which would act as like an asset exchange rate to those areas of the world where people can use them and essentially exchange it for their current currency and be able to get a little bit of aid to those areas. So it's a really cool platform because of that. And one of the things that was really unique about this team was it was actually one of the youngest teams at the event because they even had 2 students who were still in high school, like 2 18-year-olds working on this, which was really cool to see. They built this awesome application from scratch, and yeah, for their use of Link and for the use of the blockchain, they used it to essentially send aid to those disaster areas. So overall, it was a really cool project, and we're excited to work with those guys pretty closely. So, Harish, do you have any other comments on these guys?
Awesome, thanks, Clayton. So just highlighting that as you're talking about these projects, I'm bringing up the URL that's mentioned on the slide itself. And so this is the dev post website where a lot of the projects and details and links to GitHub repos are all provided. So if you are interested, just go to the URL that's mentioned on the slide there, and you can get a lot more information about each of the projects, including access to the code if you wanted to try to go through that in a little bit more detail.
Yeah, and if you're interested in the technical side of what they were doing, they used Microsoft Azure for location data, TensorFlow machine learning for filtering and classification, and then Blockmason Link for their custom token used for donation. So that was essentially their tech stack. And then, of course, Facebook and Twitter data scraping.
Okay, so another project, and this is probably no surprise because there's a lot of talk in the blockchain space about transparency, ensuring things like donations that are provided to charitable organizations are actually used in a way that the charities say that they're going to be using it. So basically providing a lot more transparency to this entire space where traditionally there have been a lot of cases where how funds are used and how much goes to administrative costs and how much actually benefits the end stakeholder either aren't necessarily provided in sort of a front and transparent manner, or there are disputes or debates about the truthfulness of some of the information that is presented. And so Charity Chain's intent here is to provide an interface where they link a user to a bunch of different charities. And what they're doing on the back end is actually taking the charity's expenditure information and also combining that with the donation information. So all of that's provided in sort of an easy to read breakdown, with all that core data being stored in the blockchain on the public ledger. And so it was, again, a fairly common example that we see of one of the benefits of using blockchain. They were able to build a really nice interface for this in a relatively short amount of time, which was neat to see. They do, utilize other tools. So one of the common points that we like to make is, Link is not just a standalone. It's intended to be used in conjunction with other tools, depending on the use case. And so here, there were some sensitive pieces of information that they elected to use something like Firebase and sort of a centralized database for, but other information like the spending of the charities, the donations that were being made, and how they were being used on a blockchain, on a public ledger. And so Blockmason Link was used for that purpose. Let me just bring up the, so yeah, four-person team. Some interesting stats here in terms of what was some of their motivation for building it, some of the challenges, but this team managed to build together a relatively nice looking front end in short order.
All right, let me take you guys through FlySafe. So this was another application. They were a mobile application as well. And this one was really cool. It was essentially a wallet for all of your identification and anything that you'd need when you're going traveling, that basically would store all that data so that you could verify that that the data was accurate, and not have to carry around all that identification like your passport or your photo ID or something like that. And all of that data would be stored securely on the blockchain. So these guys were really cool. We got to meet up with them, or I met them at the beginning of the competition. They had a lot of really cool technology that they were using in their application, including like face scanning technology that would unlock it based on your face. So a really cool use case there. They had a whole bunch of different methods to convert your money into the current currency that you were using in the area that you went to, and a bunch of cool little other things tacked onto their application that made it really useful and really full of cool technology. And their tech stack was that they access personal information using facial recognition. So that was through Microsoft Azure, and the Blink ID SDK used to scan and retrieve data from identity cards. So essentially what that was you could take a photo of your ID and it would scan all the information, all your name, your any sort of code or driver's license numbers and all that, and then store that as data instead of as an image, which would then allow that using Blockmason link to then be sent to the blockchain and stored securely, so that it couldn't be mutated and changed at that point. So that was pretty cool. You can check it out on the dev post site there, and it looked great. It was a really well designed app as well, and that's essentially what these guys did. It was really cool.
Okay, so when you think of big banks, something like blockchain doesn't necessarily come to mind, at least not from the perspective of a decentralized distributed solution. But TD was there. They were offering an API to look at applications that could help improve retention rates, especially when you had student clientele graduate and move into the workforce, retaining those student customers, even though they were being switched over to a higher cost accounts. And so they wanted to look at what were a bunch of different ways to be able to analyze this customer data and be able to help retain these customers. And so there was a team from India, actually, from Delhi, that decided to take this on. And it was pretty interesting because they kind of came into this without necessarily having the context of the Canadian banking setup, the accounts, the approach. You take a look at deposit and interest rates in India compared to here, and it's very different. And so a part of the education process here was just getting them up to speed on the fact that, we only have a few limited banks here, and at least up in Canada, giving them a sense of the types of accounts that students would normally open up, how much it would cost to have these accounts. And these guys then decided to see how many different APIs they could leverage to build something really neat. And so they came up with this rewards app, a mobile app, where they would take in a bunch of different factors, like the number of transactions that the students would be doing every month, to the number of different types of donations that they would be making if they were prompted to do so, and how long they'd been with the bank itself, and translate that into a loyalty score that was then recorded on the blockchain. They also created a custom ERC20 token, which was a dedicated rewards token for TD Bank customer clients that would be awarded that based on certain tasks or services that they would use at the bank. And they would also leverage some of the metadata for the customers to be able to offer them sort of discounts based on if it was a particular type of restaurant or grocery store or drugstore that they would frequent, be able to leverage that and present that information to the customer. They also incorporated the Alexa API to be able to have a sort of voice-activated check using Amazon Echo to be able to look at your loyalty score as well as the balance that you had in your account. And so, yeah, this team did a fantastic job. Their mobile app was very slick, as well as just the cool factor of being able to incorporate so many different APIs, such as the Alexa one, to be able to check your information just using your voice. Let's see if I can just pull up the dev post here. So, yeah, they leveraged a lot of different APIs to build their application, and came up with a pretty solid mobile app.
And that brings us to the last application that we'll be showcasing. This one was really cool. This is my personal favorite application that we got to see, because it was also a bit of a surprise. We didn't actually know that this guy was working on it. One of the other groups we got to work with a little bit. And what was also really cool about this app was that it was all built by one person. So it was an army of one that built it, which was kind of neat. There wasn't a lot of teams that were that small. And on top of that, he was actually also just in high school. So by the time he was done the application, he had to go home and finish his homework, which was kind of funny to us. Um, and what essentially Meerkat is, so this is the application he built, is that it tracks the uptime of cloud service providers. And I think we've all been there before, where we're trying to host something, we're trying to decide which cloud service provider we want to use, if it's AWS, if it's DigitalOcean, or any of the other ones. And they all seem to claim the same thing, that there's 100% uptime. And we've seen that they're through all the sorts of outages that we've seen throughout history, that this just isn't true. So essentially what Meerkat does, since it is so hard to decide which cloud service provider to actually use, because the only thing that we really have is you can look at their marketing materials, but that's just marketing materials, so that's going to be spun in the way that makes them seem best, or you can go through word of mouth by asking other developers what they use, but even then that's not really evidence of which is the best. So what this one does is it essentially records the uptime percentage based on when their servers are online. So it pings the servers every 5 minutes of all these different hosted cloud service providers. And if any of them end up going down, it permanently records that on the Ethereum blockchain. And basically, you can look at that as a single source of truth to see which services actually do go down and which ones stay up for longer. It was super well designed, as you can see, simple, clean, and it was easy to use. The use of their microservice to use Link to record on the blockchain when these services are down was really smart, really cool. So I really like that personally, and yeah, he did a great job.
Yeah, and I don't know if Clayton mentioned this, but this project was actually the winner of the Link API prize.
Yeah, that's right. And with that, I think what we're going to step into next is a little bit of details on how they actually did this with Link, what Link does, so that you get more of a picture of why they were able to work with blockchain so quickly, with almost all of these projects having no blockchain experience, working with blockchain before this 36-hour event.
Yeah, that's actually a key point in this, is that in terms of the support that Clayton and myself provided, it was really just to a couple teams. We actually didn't even know that 3 of the other teams, we saw some activity obviously happening on the server, but hadn't had any of the other 3 teams reach out to us for support or ask us questions. They managed to use the onboarding material and just figure things out. And for a lot of them, in a relatively short amount of time, we're able to do so, primarily because Link abstracts away a lot of that complexity that comes with getting started in the blockchain space, and being able to make a certain amount of progress in a very short amount of time. And so we were really excited about that. It's really good product validation for us. For a lot of the folks who were asking about, examples and demos and whatnot, we directed them to try this, the Collectable Assets app, which we've got available open source on our GitHub repo under microservices demo. And what's really powerful about this particular demo is the fact that we're able to basically create a series of microservices. So an ownership service that just records ownership of a particular asset on the blockchain, a payment service that takes leverages a custom ERC20 token that you can build and use that for the payment service underneath the hood, and a comment service, which is similar to what you would see with sort of the feedback and comment mechanism for any social media website. All of these are broken down into simple microservices that the teams could use, adapt for the particular blockchain network that they wanted to use, and then be able to expand and build on it. So this was definitely sort of the building block for a lot of these teams to be able to get up and running quickly. And it also highlights the interoperability of Link by being able to leverage multiple chains for the benefits. And so in this particular Collectable Assets app, example, we use GoChain because it's quick, low gas fees, very high transactions per second. We use Ethereum for the payment service because, again, it provides greater transparency. There's a bigger ecosystem of tools that the Ethereum community has to offer, everything from the block explorers like Etherscan to the browser wallets like MetaMask if you did want to use that. All of that's available as part of the Ethereum ecosystem. And then for the common service, we just use the Link Private Network because it's quick, it's fast, but it's also maybe something that we don't want to be spending a lot of money on in terms of gas transaction fees to record on a blockchain. And the Link Private Network provides a nice, easy instance for us to store that data at very, very low, in fact, no cost in this particular case here. So highly recommend anyone who's thinking about building an application that leverages blockchain to take a look at this microservices demo, because it does provide a nice foundation and a template to use to be able to build off of. And as we're talking with the CryptoChicks community and working to build some education content and curriculum, this is one of the core foundational tools that we're intending to use to be able to help developers build their applications quickly by providing these types of templates. Okay, so this was a relatively short webinar. We just wanted to go through a bunch of the applications that were built during our experience at Hack the North. But at this point, we'll definitely want to open it up and see if anyone had any questions, if there's any more details that you wanted, any of the projects that we covered. And again, definitely check out the microservices demo with the link here, which is a good template to use to then build your own applications that leverage the power of blockchain. So if anyone's got any questions, just raise your hand in the Zoom application, and we'll unmute you. Okay, I guess we did a stellar job, or everyone's a little shy, or there's no questions. But if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to myself and Clayton directly as well. On this last page here, we do talk about sort of a few different channels that you can reach us at. So either Twitter, Reddit, Telegram, and we've also got a Slack developer community channel that we've set up. And so reach out to us, ask us about any tools that can help you build your applications, or anything else in sort of the crypto space that you'd like to get some input and some guidance on, and we're happy to help. And if there's no more questions, I'll give you back half an hour of your time, or just under half an hour of your time, and I'll keep the chat window open here for a little bit in case anyone's got any questions. Feel free to message us. But thank you again so much for your time.